Welcome back to iOS Application Development at SSFS. In the last video, we took a look at Xcode. We opened up a simple project. We looked at some of the parts of Xcode and how to run and stop an app. In today's video, we're going to take a look at how to add elements to the user interface and how to align them so they appear correct on devices with different size screens. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to again run our app very quickly just to see what this is going to look like. I'm going to hit Command R to run it, and build succeeded. It's going to open up the simulator, and you can see I've got my app running on an iPhone 6s Plus sized screen, and you can notice how all the labels fit in place correctly. But if you do notice that it's a little bit different on this simulator screen versus the view here, you can see that things aren't lined up in quite the same way, so it does look a little bit different. And the reason for this is something called an adaptive user interface. And as we said before, Apple makes devices with a number of different sizes. You've got iPads, you've got iPhones, you've got an iPhone 6, which is bigger than an iPhone 5, and so on. And it's very difficult to make one app that looks the same on every single device, but adaptive user interfaces really help us, and they're going to help us line up different things like labels and buttons. And that's part of what we're going to take a look at today. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my simulator. I'm going to hit Command Tab and then Command period to stop it. And I'm going to add a new label to my view on the user interface. So I'm going to open up the object library, and I'm going to use the shortcuts Option Command L, and the Option key is the one next to the Command key, it's to the left. Okay, so Option Command L, and notice the cursor goes here, and I'm going to type label since that's what I want, or I can start typing it, and label comes up. All I have to do is just drag a label onto the interface. I'll put it right out here. It looks like there's some good space. And I'm going to double click my label, and I'm going to make a label called Learn to Code. Okay, my label is still on the screen. Now what I'm going to use is I'm going to use what's called the Attributes Inspector, and that's to get to the Attributes Inspector, it's Option Command 4, and that opens up this area right here. Okay? And notice that here's the text of my label already filled in. I can change the color. Let's make it a different color. Let's make it, I don't know, how about let's make this kind of color. It's kind of a good color. Change my button's color. I can change the font. If I click here, I can make it, let's make it a custom font. I'll change the family to, let's do Avenir Next, and then for the style I'll make it ultra light, and I'll make the size 51 point. And you can see now it no longer fits in my area, so I'm going to go ahead and make that look bigger. Okay, I'll drag that out, and now I've got a label, Learn to Code. And again, that looks like it fits right there in my app. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay, Command R to run it. And let's see what that Learn to Code app looks like. So now you can see my app came up, but notice that Learn to Code doesn't fit on the screen correctly. It goes off the edge here. And the reason for that is I actually have to apply what are called constraints, which tell the label exactly where to appear on my view so that it looks right when I run it on an actual device like a phone or an iPad. So let's go ahead and, well, let's look at this, just compare. Again, it looks fine in the view here, but not on the simulator. So I'm going to Command Tab back to Xcode, Command period to stop the app, and let's go ahead and add some constraints so that my label appears in the right spot. So I'm going to have my app selected. I'm going to click on this button right here, which is the pin button. You can see a little tooltip comes up, and if I click on it, I'm going to add a constraint, Then I'm going to constrain it to the top of the view. Okay. And it says, you notice it's the top one, so it's the distance from the top of the view to the label. I'm going to go ahead and add that constraint. And you can see I have a line, and my app is now constrained to 200 plus pixels from the top. The blue line indicates that it's actually a vertical space constraint and that it's running successfully. And notice that this outline is in red, which means that something is still kind of wrong. So let's go ahead and add an alignment constraint. I'm going to do it horizontally in the container, and I'm going to do this drop down based on the current canvas value. And again, that's the same as adding a almost like the vertical constraint, but it's going to center it horizontally based on where it is right now. So I'm going to add that constraint. Notice now that blue line aligns with the center part of my label, so it's aligned horizontally. So now I have a vertical constraint and a horizontal constraint, but still I have this orange outline, which means something's wrong. And in fact, up here in my document outline, I have an arrow. So let's go ahead and click on that, and that's going to tell me what else is wrong. So it says, well, I have two things wrong. My run for vice president that we changed in the last video is wrong, but my learn to code says the expected values are not correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to make sure my learn to code label is selected. I'm going to go to the editor, resolve auto layout issues, and I'm going to update frames. And that fixes the frame now. The orange went away, and notice that the error went away. So now my learn to code label should be aligned correctly. Now let's go ahead and run this app. Command R. Let's see what it looks like. Well, it looks a little bit better. We still see it, but it's not perfect. It's not all on the screen. So let's see if we can fix that. Command Tab, Command Period. So down here is something called the Interface Builder. And notice right now it's set to width any, height any. So that's a very generalized way of looking at things. We're going to change these are called size classes. I'm going to change it to a compact width, regular height, which you can see it's for all iPhones held in portrait mode. So if I change that size class, again, look how it changed, and it looks the view looks a little bit different. If we look at these different size classes, you can see that this class might be for a portrait iPhone. This might be for an iPad, in portrait. So different size classes can help you build the right layout for the app you want. So again, I'm going to put this back to compact width, regular height. And I'm going to open the Assistant Editor now. We're going to actually preview this app. To open the Assistant Editor, it's Option, Command, Enter. And this is actually the button for Assistant Editor. And notice it shows me, by default, it shows whatever class is associated with the view you're looking at. So since I'm looking at the view controller on the main storyboard, it shows me the code for it. And again, there's not a lot here. We'll have a lot more to say about what we can type in here later. I'm going to change this from automatic to preview so I can see what the preview of this device is. And notice I have an iPhone 4-inch preview. I'm actually going to click on it and delete it. I'm going to press the delete key. I'm going to use the add button down here to add an iPhone 4.7-inch screen. And notice how this looks an awful lot like the layout when I did the simulator. So I'm going to go ahead and close this document outline for right now so I can see more of my view controller. I'm going to move my label a little bit so it fits on the screen. I'm going to go to the editor. I'm going to update the constraints. And notice how when I updated the constraints, the value of my preview changed, and now it looks like it's in the right place. So let's go ahead and run our app. Now it looks perfect. So now the label appears exactly where we want it. Well, let's go ahead and rotate it. So I'm going to hit the command and then the right arrow to rotate it. And yeesh, that does not look so good. So we need to fix that. So I'm going to rotate it back to the way it was before. Let's go ahead and stop the app from running. I'm going to go to my interface builder. I'm going to choose any width, compact height. And notice again, it looks a lot like it was in the simulator. I'm going to click on my Learn to Code. I'm going to move it down here a little bit. I'm going to update my constraints under Editor, resolve auto layout issues, update constraints. Again, no more orange outline. Now let's run it one more time. Okay, so it looks good here. When I rotate it, it looks good that way. Okay, so by using different size classes and using the preview, we've actually created an adaptive user interface so that the label appears in the position we want it, no matter which way the device is held. So in this video, we've learned how to add a label, how to modify a label, change some of the properties of that label, and then add constraints so that it appears on the screen correctly the way we want it. In the next video, we'll take a look at how to add buttons and have the user be able to interact with your app.